Hey party people! Today we are illustrating embroideries. The good news is with embroideries, there's not really a special sleight of hand trick that you need to master in order for your embroideries to look good. There are logistics, common sense things that you have to consider when you are designing, drawing, and coloring your embroideries. And those are the things that I'm going to go over with you guys in this video. Number one, when you are designing your embroideries and then thinking about scaling them down to your figure, you have to think about the scale. Like, let's say you developed this pattern. How big is it going to be on the body? Okay? Do you want these two flowers to be the width of your palm? Do you want just one of these flowers to be the width of your palm? Do you want each of these flowers to be like so small it's only about a quarter of your palm? As the designer, you have to figure that out. If you've watched my lace rendering video or my pattern fabric rendering video, then you know that I like to scale things down using a palm to palm ratio. So let's say this flower is as big as my palm. That's how the design is going to look on the body. So that when I'm drawing it on the croquis, here is the size of this figure's palm. And so my flower is going to be this big on the figure. And let's say I'm going to do a bunch of embroideries here, all these stitching, and I'm going to have these flowers. These flowers are going to be palm size. So that's how it's going to scale on the body. Okay? If you want some that are a quarter of the size, your flowers are going to be this big. And so maybe you have a cluster that are this big. Right? So as you're designing, figure out how big you want it and then scale it down. You could do the reverse as you're designing too. Like maybe you're designing on the whole figure and you're like, you know what? I want them to be big. Like I want them, I'm going to do a big skirt, like an A-line skirt, and I want big flowers that come out like this, and there are my leaves and whatnot. And so you have the size of the embroidery that you want on the figure in relation to the rest of the design. And then later you can be like, okay, how many palms is that? That's a palm, that's a palm. So it's 2.5 by 2.5 palms across that you need to make your life size embroidery. When you are drawing your embroidery, just draw the embroidery, okay? So if you're drawing this, you're drawing the flowers. So yeah, you're going to draw the size of the flowers, scale down accordingly. And yeah, when you look at this, she's a 3/4 figure, and so you're squishing the embroidery to 3/4 of the original size. So if this is the flower, then you're making this 75% of the width. And so if that is the size, I want to shave a little bit off here and shave a little bit off here. Okay? And so these are going to stay the same length, but I'm going to squish this, and I'm going to squish this and squish this so that everything is more squished than it was before. The further away the thing is from you, like see this shoulder is the furthest away, the more squished it is. This flower is closest to us, so it's the least squished. The embroideries are tightly packed threads. Okay, this is a chain stitch embroidery. This is your classic fill stitch, whatever. But you won't be able to gather it and have the embroidery follow it. Okay, it'll look a little bit bulky because there's all those threads. Unless you have something like this where the embroidery is skinny and delicate and there are a lot of spaces in between, and it's gonna follow the drape of the fabric. And when you draw something like this, you better make it follow the drape of the fabric. Also, when you're drawing your embroidery on your figure, Ask yourself, is the fabric embroidered and then you cut and sew it, or is the embroidery something you put on top? Because if you have an embroidered fabric, something like this, where it already has a bunch of embroideries and you're cutting and sewing it, then your design has to be cut along those cut lines. And anytime you have a seam, that embroidery is going to break and then start again, just like any other pattern fabric. If you are putting an embroidery on top of a finished garment, like let's say you're going to put a shoulder embroidery here, then the flower is going to sit on top of all these seams and you're not going to see the seams, just the embroidery on top. Okay, so think about if it's an effect or the fabric. When you're coloring, color matching is one of the real key components of design communication. And so you need to make sure that you match the color as closest as you possibly can. During my demos, I pull markers that I hope are as close as possible, but because I do so many of these demos, I'm not gonna run out and get more markers for every single demo. But if this was my color story for my collection, I would go to the store and make sure that I got the colors that matched all of these things exactly. It's one of the main reasons why I encourage people to get familiar with different marker brands and different color pencil brands, because I'm someone who will go and try to find the best color match regardless of the brand. And I familiarize myself with the different brands so that I can pick whatever color I want without worrying about it. With paints, you can mix whatever paint color you want, so that doesn't even matter. You just pick the brand that you like the best, right? Yeah, everyone has their favorites when it comes to marker brands and when it comes to color pencil brands. And, I definitely have brands that I gravitate towards first, but if I can't find it, I will go look somewhere else before I fudge the color. Next up is texture matching. Now, when I am doing embroideries, I prefer using color pencil for the actual embroidery because I think it's the best texture match, regardless of what I'm using for the rest of the illustration. Like for the purposes of the demo, I pulled the colors for this, and yeah, that's a pretty good color match and everything, but and it works because this embroidery floss is really clean and not fuzzy, but I still think that the color pencil is a better texture match. Now, if your figure is very small like this, and your embroidery is very small, then getting a perfect texture match is not that huge of a deal. It's when your embroideries get bigger or when you do a more close-up design and you see more of the illustration, more of the embroidery, then texture matching becomes a little bit more significant. And then when I am matching the texture, I always use the pencil strokes to match up with the direction of the threads in the embroidery. And if I am designing this, I kind of do a guesstimate. When you have fill things like this, you're not going to really have curved stitches. You're going to have straight sitting next to each other for the most part. Only when you're really doing like this kind of chain stitch embroidery or this kind of border effect where you're going to have curved stitches. Even if you're doing a close-up illustration of a design communication sketch of your embroidery, it is not essential that you get the direction of your stitches perfectly correct, because that's what your embroidery tape is for. Your embroiderer is going to make a tape for you, and that tape is going to have the direction of the stitches. What is an embroidery tape? An embroidery tape is a computer file. They will take your artwork, say this is your design, you have everything drawn out and colored in Adobe Illustrator, you've created an EPS file, and you give it to your embroiderer, size perfectly and everything. And then your embroiderer takes it and they transfer it, they digitize it, they translate it into information that the embroidery machine can read to embroider that design. That's the tape. So when your embroiderer says, oh, do you have the tape for this already made? That's what they mean. Okay? If you don't have the tape, it's a fresh artwork that you never made a tape for, you can have the embroiderer make the tape. They will charge you a tape charge or a setup charge for that tape. If you made the artwork and you pay the tape charge to the embroiderer, you own the tape and you can ask for a copy of the tape, so that if you use another embroiderer in the future, you can just give that tape to the next embroiderer and you don't have to pay another tape charge. When the tape is created, then, when you get a sample, you'll see the direction of the stitches, and then the tape will give you the stitch count for your embroidery. And that's how embroideries get priced, So if it's something small, like 3,000 to 5,000 stitches, it'll be X dollars. If it's like, 100,000 stitches, it'll be X dollars. Okay, back to media. My favorite way to illustrate embroideries on clothes is to color the garment, the background garment, with marker or paint, ink, gouache, whatever, I don't care. And then use color pencil on top to illustrate the embroidery. Sometimes, especially if you have a really dark background and really light embroidery colors, you could use opaque gouache instead. Take your gouache and don't add a lot of water to it so that it remains opaque, and then paint the embroidery design on top of the paint or on top of the color pencil or on top of the marker that you have painted for the t-shirt. Like something like this where the background is black, you're not gonna go in there later and try to color in black around every single shade. That's insanity. So in a situation like this, I would paint the background black with marker or paint, and then let everything dry, of course, and use an opaque gouache to draw all these designs on top of the black ground. If you watch a lot of my videos, you're probably like, oh my God, Zoe, we get it. You love gouache. It's like, what? Best tool for the job, all right? Even if your background color is light, like this lilac color, this is definitely one where you want to paint the whole thing lilac and then go in with a gold color pencil or a gold gouache and put in the embroidery, because the embroidery is so delicate and has all these nooks and crannies. You don't want to paint the purple all up in these little corners and stuff. Oh my God, just thinking about it makes my head hurt. The only time I really don't want to layer the media is when I'm using color pencil for the entire garment. You don't want to layer color pencil colors on top of each other, because you'll end up blending the colors and you'll end up burnishing to get that mixed glossy sort of thing, okay? Let's say that's your background t-shirt color. And you're mixing the two colors and burnishing, okay? This is the actual color. Do you see the difference between these two colors layered together? I really don't like that. And then when you burnish, you lose the texture. Like the whole point, the beauty of the color pencil was so that you can create the threaded texture. But if you're mixing them like that, just looks not great, okay? So if you're doing something like this, I would actually draw the flower. Make sure that you are coloring around the design, and then go in there with your stitches. Next consideration, shading. When you have a large embroidery like this, you shade both the embroidery and the garment. Okay, you have this burnt orange color for the garment, and you have these brown colors for the shadows, and then you have all your embroidery colors, but notice how dark they get in the shadow areas. Something delicate like this, I wouldn't really pay too much attention to shading the embroideries. Okay, like I would make sure that I would paint my lilac, shadow my lilac, let everything dry 817%, and then go in there with, a gold marker, gold brush pen, or gold color pencil, and put in all these little delicate embroideries. But I wouldn't concern myself too much about shadowing them. Like, you can see a few highlights here, but you notice the color difference between the base lilac and the shadow lilac. The color difference between the shadow gold and the in light gold is not as strong. Okay? You don't need that to show the 3D-ness when your embroidery is this delicate. Something like this, where there's a lot of fill, for sure, it would definitely get much darker in here with the greens. Oh, this marker is drying out. If you watch my denim video, then you'll know that I have a special box full of drying out markers. I don't throw them away. I save them for different texture things. Okay, this is kind of boxy, so I'm not going to have a bust shadow, but I am going to have these deeper shadows over here. I'm going to follow the texture. I'm going to have this little curly edge. There's a tiny bit of depth to it, so I'm going to let that poke out of the side a little bit. I'm going to let these, of course, again, follow the texture of the actual embroidery. And again, let it stick out a tiny bit. So I layered the white and then the yellow on top to make sure that the yellow really showed through. And yeah, if I were doing this project more long term, I would definitely go and pick better greens for those leaves. And render in the direction of the threads, or what you think will be the direction of the threads if you don't know yet. And it will give it an embroidered textured look and not just a silk screen. So bonus mini tutorial on embroidery's cousin. And you're like, yeah, Zoe, this is why your videos are always so damn long. I can't help it. I am definitely one of those teachers where, you ask a question and I might give you more answer than you actually thought you wanted. Although ask any of my students in class, I never end class late. Like, it's happened like 3 times my entire years of teaching, and I'm always horrified. Let's take a minute to talk about faggoting. Faggoting is embroidery's brazen wild child cousin, okay, showing slices of skin, ooh la la, okay. Faggoting is when you bring 2 fabrics together, and you leave a gap in between, and then you bridge this gap with stitches, okay? This is a faggoted seam. These come in all kinds of designs. You can make really big gaps. You can make really skinny, barely noticeable gaps. You can bridge these gaps with little ladder stitches like this, or things that look more like crosses. They're all, go look it up and you'll see a lot of different stitches that you can put in that space. All you would need to do when you are drawing a garment like this is, here's your garment, okay? There's the top. There's the little boxy sleeve because it's a crisp cotton. And then your faggoting is here. And then you have a yoke. Well, here's your collar. And then you have your yoke. And you would take your skin tone and you would put in your skin tone in those gaps, or whatever is showing through those gaps, like maybe another layer of fabric, whatever, right? So this one, it ends here, right? So my skin tone only shows to there. And then you would take whatever thread color and put in the gap. I'm using gel pen, even though the texture isn't really perfect because it's a strong white that's very skinny. This is a color pencil, and it's not as strong when it's a single line. Color pencil is plenty strong when you're coloring it in, but skinny lines, the white gel pen stands out a lot better. So for this, if you had a colored a thread in there, you can use like fine liners, super skinny markers, which is basically what fine liners are. Okay. So that's faggoting. Couple of extra bits because that we just went over what kind of teacher I am, right? Okay, so this is not embroidery, okay? This is applique. Applique is when you cut pieces out of fabric and you sew them onto your garment, or you apply them to your garment, right? So all these colors, they are basically patches or big pieces of fabric, small pieces of fabric. Appliques come in all sizes. And they're stitched down, and you see these borders? Those are stitches, okay? They're stitched down. This is also not embroidery. These are beaded appliques, okay? My guess, I don't know for sure because these are not my jeans, but my guess would be that they made beaded patches or appliques, and then they sewed the edges of these appliques onto the jeans after the jeans were constructed. You want to learn how to render this, you should go watch my pearls and beading video that I posted a couple weeks ago. This is also not straight up embroidery. I mean, what it is freaking adorable. Look at this thing, you guys. It's so cute. I wish I had designed it. What the heck? This is a chenille patch, which is applique's sporty, casual cousin. Okay, and so it's all on a felt piece. Chenille patches incorporate some embroidery, but this is not a straight up embroidery. This is a chenille patch. If you want a tutorial on appliques and chenille patches, that's a whole another video's worth of information. So feel free to request it. Keep in mind the request queue is 14 months long. I love you guys. Apparently you guys like me and my teaching style a little bit too. Not gonna lie, the queue freaks me out a little bit sometimes. It's so long. Like, when am I gonna teach you guys all this stuff? And then people are like, Zoe, are you ever gonna do like pattern making or sewing videos? I'm like, maybe if I ever run out of things to talk about. Hashtag always be practicing. Hashtag practice not magic. Hashtag if your first one sucks, you're right on track. I love you guys. Please share, like, subscribe, comment, sprinkle the link, talk to me, come find me on Instagram or Twitter, whatnot. I don't post a whole lot, but I do post regularly. Go practice, have fun. enjoy embroideries. There's so many things you can do with embroideries.
You know, you can do teeny tiny all over embroideries. You can do one huge design. You can do delicate, feminine, pretty, pastel things. You can do bold, geometric, insane, explosive things. Okay, embroideries is like whole world of fun.
Anyway, have fun with embroideries, and I will see you in the next video.